Parashat Beshalach. The Jews are in a very precarious position. They thought they were freed from Egypt. Pharaoh actually kicked them out. They get to the desert. And they start walking. But then all of a sudden they realize that in back of them, the Egyptians are returning in order to bring them back to Egyptian servitude. And in front of them is the raging Red Sea. They panic. They cry out and complain to God and to Moses. Weren't there enough graves in Egypt? And Moses calms them. And calms them in a very real way. Chapter 14, verse 13. Al tirau, don't be afraid. Hityatzvu, stand silently. Ura'u et Yeshuat Hashem asher yaseh lachem hayom. And you will see the salvation of the Lord which He will do for you today. And then, the last verse, verse 14. Hashem yilachem lachem. God will do battle for you. Va'atem tacharishun. You remain silent. Fundamentally, have faith in God. God will see you through this crisis. You need do nothing at all. Just wait for the salvation of the Lord. Very strangely, however, the Hasidic interpreters take this last verse statement of Moses. Hashem yilachem lachem, God will do battle for you, va'atem tacharishun, and you remain silent. And gives it a totally different interpretation. Even a totally different translation. He says, they say, the Hasidic masters, Hashem yilachem lachem, God will bring you bread, lechem. But, atem tacharishun, you must plow, choresh. What are they saying? They're taking a verse. And although literally speaking, the translation may be legitimate, it's turning the verse on its head. That's not what Moses means in context. Moses has just said to them, stand, hityatzvu, stand still. You'll see the salvation of the Lord. So what do the Hasidim mean when they take that verse and they say, God will give you bread, but you must plow? But the Hasidim are right. They are right because of the very next verse. The very next verse, verse 15, chapter 14. God's response. We heard Moses' response. We saw the Jewish response. Now, God's response. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. God says to Moses, Ma titzak elai. Why are you crying out to me? And here it's clear that Moses prayed also. He didn't just want God to rely on the Israelite prayer. God says to Moses, Ma titzak elai. Why did you cry out to me in prayer? Daber el b'nei Yisrael v'yisau. Speak to the children of Israel and get going. Get moving. Go into the Red Sea. Rashi says that God said to Moses, this is not the time for prayer, for a lengthy prayer, when the Jews are in such trouble. This is the time for action. The Jews have to do something first. Our God empowers His nation to act. Our God doesn't want His nation to stand by silently. and wait for him. In fact, God is waiting for us. And God waited then for the Jews to act. They had to go into the raging waters. They had to go into the wild seas. They had to be willing to put their lives on the line for freedom. Only after God saw them begin to act and go into the Red Sea and run the risk of drowning, but with the clarion call, give me liberty or give me death, then God will be ready to free them. Then God will be ready to take the miracle and to make certain that they would not be brought back to Egypt as slaves again. Perhaps the most important theological lesson in Jewish history. Jews are not to only rely on God. We only have a right to rely on God after we do everything we can possibly do, including Mesirut Nefesh, putting our lives on the line. The Hasidim understood it, and therefore they improvised Moses' response based upon the later divine reaction. Hashem yilachem lachem, God will give you bread. God will do the battle for you. But atem tacharishun, you have to plow, you have to act, you have to plow into the seas and show God how important it is for you. You are ready to do anything you can do, including risking your lives. Shabbat Shalom.